Welcome, I'm Tyler, and in this video, we're going to configure an on-premise Active Directory using Azure virtual machines. So we're going to configure one virtual machine to be the domain controller using Windows Server, and then using Windows 11, we're going to configure the other virtual machine to be the client that connects to the domain controller. So we're going to begin here in the Resource Manager, and we're going to create a resource group. The resource group is the logical container that's going to be where we place the virtual machines, the virtual network, and the IP addresses. We're going to name this resource group Active Directory. And the region is going to be East US 2. We want to put everything in the same region so there's no issues with connectivity. Review and create, and now we're going to create. Refresh. And we see the Active Directory resource group has been created. So now we are going to create a virtual network. We're going to put that in the Active Directory resource group. And we're going to call the virtual network Active Directory. We're going to create a subnet here called Active Directory VNet. Now we'll hit review and create. The validation is passed, so we'll create the virtual network. The deployment has succeeded, so the Active Directory VNet subnet and the Active Directory virtual network have now been created. Next, we're going to create the virtual machine for the domain controller. So we can go here to create Azure virtual machine. The resource group is going to be Active Directory. We'll call the domain controller DC1 in East US 2, which is the same region as the resource group. The image, we're going to choose Windows Server 2025. Username DC1. Go to next. Next, here to networking. And we're going to put this virtual machine into the Active Directory network with the Active Directory VNet subnet that we had created. So I'm going to review and create. The validation has passed. We'll begin creating the virtual machine for the domain controller. We'll now create the virtual machine for the client. So we'll put that in the Active Directory resource group. We'll call this Client 1 in the East US 2. And this is going to be a Windows 11 Pro image. Username Client 1. Confirm we have rights to the Windows 11 license. And we're going to put the client virtual machine in the same network. So we're going to choose Active Directory. Subnet will be the Active Directory VNet. Now we'll go to Review and Create. Validation is passed, and we will create the virtual machine for the client. Both virtual machines have been deployed, and we can now see that the client 1 virtual machine has been created, and the DC1 domain controller virtual machine is up and running. So the next thing we're going to do is set the domain controller's IP to static. We want to do that because the domain controller is going to be set up also as a DNS server, and we do not want the IP address to be fluctuating because the client will be relying on a static IP from the domain controller. So we're going to go to Networking, Network Settings. This is the virtual NIC card for the controller. I'm going to come down here to IP config, change this to static. The private IP address is going to be 10.0.0.4. Hit save. That has been updated. So now we're going to access the domain controller virtual machine. So I'm going to grab the public IP address from here, open up remote desktop connection, I'm going to put in the username, and connect in. Next, we are going to connect the client virtual machine's DNS settings to the private IP address of the domain controller. So we're going to open up the client virtual machine, go to Network Settings, access the virtual NIC card, go here to DNS Servers, select Custom. I'm going to add in the private IP address of the domain controller virtual machine. Now the virtual machine is going to restart. And after it's restarted, we are going to connect in. So now we are going to use the public IP address of the client virtual machine. And remote desktop connection into that machine. Now we're going to test the connectivity between client 1 and DC1. So I'm going to come over here to DC1, and I'm going to get DC1's private IP address. I'm going to come here to client 1 and open up PowerShell. Ping 10.0.0.0.4. And we can see that the ping is getting a reply and a response. So there's 4 packets sent and 4 packets received. So the connection is there. And now we're going to install Active Directory. So we'll begin by going to Add Roles and Features. In DC1, we're going to add Active Directory Domain Services. Select to restart the server automatically if required. And now we'll begin installing Active Directory. Okay, Active Directory has finished installing. So we're going to click over here and click Promote this server to a domain controller. And here's where we're going to add a new forest. The forest will be mydomain.com. And we'll need to set a password. NetBIOS name will be mydomain. Now we're doing the prerequisite checks. All prerequisite checks were passed. So we're going to begin installation. And now the forest has been installed. The domain controller virtual machine will need to restart. So we're going to open up remote desktop connection and connect into DC1's public IP address. But now since we've created the forest for mydomain.com and the Jane admin user, we're going to log in. We've now logged in as Jane admin. And we will test that by typing in "who am I" in PowerShell. And we can see we are in mydomain/Jane. Next, we're going to join client 1 to the domain. So we're going to right click on the Windows icon and go to System. And come down here to Domain or Workgroup, click Change. Member of domain will be mydomain.com. And since we created Jane admin to have full administrative privileges, we should be able to log in as her. And we have a pop-up that says "Welcome to mydomain.com domain." And now the computer will have to restart for the changes to apply. While client 1 is restarting, we are going to go ahead and add client 1 into the clients folder. So here it is in computers, showing that it's connected to the domain, and we're just going to drag and drop that into clients. We are going to test that client 1 has joined the domain by logging into its public IP address as Jane admin. mydomain.com/Jane. And the connection is being made. So that is indicating that client 1 has joined the Active Directory domain, mydomain.com. We're going to further test that we are in the domain using PowerShell. And so we are logged in to client 1. First we'll ask, "Who am I?" And we see it is mydomain.com/Jane. And here we can see an ipconfig/all. The host name is client 1. It is connected to my domain's DNS. So now on the client VM, we're going to set up remote desktop for all non-administrative users. We're going to right click on the start icon, go to System, I'm going to scroll down to Remote Desktop, select Remote Desktop Users, select Add, and we're going to add the domain users. Select OK. And now all users will have access to remote desktop with client 1. Now we're going to run a PowerShell script to generate 1,000 users for the domain. So we're going to open up PowerShell. It's going to be PowerShell ISE, which is PowerShell with the scripting environment. I'm going to click this drop-down arrow for script. I'm going to paste a script in here. This script is available on the GitHub project link. We're going to come up here and take out a 0, so there'll be 1,000 users. We'll save this as script. Make a PowerShell script, and we're going to run the script. And we could see all of these random first names and last names being generated. And if we come over here on the Active Directory users and computers, we could see in the employees folder all of these users that are now being created. Now we're going to test the validity of these new users that have been created, and we're going to remotely connect in as one of these new users through client 1. So I'm going to pick an easier to remember name here, wed.cath. And we're going to come to remote desktop connection and verifying this is the public address for client 1. It is. So we're going to change the login name. So it'll be mydomain.com/wed.cath. Put in the password. And it has successfully begun connecting. Now we are at the desktop of the virtual machine here. We're going to test and make sure that wed.cath actually did work. Check who am I, and we are at mydomain/wed.cath. And here we can see we are logged in as client 1 on mydomain.com as the DNS server.